So this happened earlier today, and it was my first encounter with a Karen. I'm not from the US. I was waiting in line to enter the building, dentist office, as required following COVID protocol. So there I was at 9:50 a.m., and this lady, who by the way looked like your typical Karen, mid-50s with that haircut, blonde hair, not natural of course, and was walking as if the place was hers. Anyway, there I was behind her, and it was her turn to enter. A lady was there checking the temperature and asking some questions so that she could guide her, and then the screeching started. "Why are you doing this to me? This is unfair. I cannot believe it. I will have your job by the end of the day. You will be hearing from me." Bear in mind that all this was in the high-pitched voice that makes your ears bleed. And then she started coughing really badly, so everyone around was understandably concerned because COVID. May I remind you that this was not even at 10 a.m., like it was way too early for this nonsense. We started asking her to leave so we could go to our appointments. Then she looked at us with that look of disgust and shock and said, "You're siding with her?" She was then asked to step aside by a security guard so the rest, about 10-15 people in line now, could enter. Want to know what was the problem? She was asked if she had an appointment and if so, to tell where. That was it. She just needed to say where she was going because there can only be so many people inside the building. Thus, they only wanted to know if she had an appointment. I was dumbfounded, all that this early. Backstory. I am self-employed and run 2 businesses, so I bought myself an almost brand new BMW G3 1530D. It was only 6 months old and only ran 6,000 kilometers so far. I run a used car sales shop for German vehicles besides my other business, and since my father was a passionate BMW driver, it was clear to me to follow his footsteps on behalf of cars. Back to the story. One day, I was on my way home from work at around 6 p.m. and I got hungry. I had about 150 kilometers left to drive and I didn't want to eat dinner this late. I decided to stop by at one of the gas stations located directly at the Autobahn, motorway for UKI highway for US. So I found a fast food restaurant, got to the drive-in counter, and ordered my dinner. Nothing special so far. At this point in Germany, it wasn't allowed for fast food places to host any guests inside past 6 p.m. So I parked my car, opened the back door, and sat down in the trunk to enjoy my fast food dinner. Shortly after I sat down, an old minivan pulled over to a stop next to me. A woman opened the door and looked at me in disgrace. I didn't think much of it and continued to eat. Suddenly, she came directly to me and said, "Excuse me, what are you doing here?" "Hello there, I am just eating dinner here. Nothing special." "Where is the owner of the car?" "That would be me." "Why? Is something wrong?" "Don't you dare to lie to me. How can a young kid like you own something expensive like that? Besides, you don't look German at all, so you must have stolen the car." "I have a slightly darker skin tone, since my mother is part Asian." She cuts me off. "I don't want to hear any more lies. I will call the police and have you arrested if you don't hand me over the keys so I can return the car to the rightful owner." "Well, go ahead and call them." I really thought that she was joking, but she actually called the police. They arrived like 20 minutes later. A policewoman and a policeman got out of their car, which ironically was the same BMW G31 model I drove, just in police color. The policewoman came to me first and asked me if everything was fine, and she wanted an explanation of what happened here from my point of view. So when I tried to start explaining things to her, Karen came over to us, pushed herself between me and the policewoman and shouted at me for being a liar, even though I haven't said anything yet. "Why are you being so nice to him? He stole that car. He is surely not even old enough to drive a car anyway." "Don't waste your time. Arrest him and hand me over the keys. I know the owner of the car, and I will return it to him right now." "Ma'am, you have to calm down. I will not arrest someone because you're telling me to. I will do my job and first ask him a few things, and then we will see what will happen. But for now, I am asking you to step aside and go to my colleague and talk to him first." Why should I talk to him? Why don't you just do your job? I am a citizen of this country and I pay your income. Do what I want. Yes, she actually said that. Don't you realize that you are currently acting very strangely, and this gentleman over there is just being quiet and calm all the time? Behave yourself or you will face some serious problem. After that, Karen went with the policeman, and I got asked by the policewoman again about what happened. I explained to her that Karen thought I had stolen the car, and that I don't even have a license, and she even acted a bit racist against me. The policewoman was very friendly and asked for my documents such as ID, driving license, and my paperwork for the car. After I handed her everything, she went to the police car and checked everything. In the meanwhile, I just waited and played a bit on my phone. A couple of minutes later, she came back and said everything was fine and asked me if I wanted to press charges against Karen for being racist. I declined since I really just wanted to eat dinner and drive home. Her colleague came over to me and they talked about the whole situation. It was very clear that the woman made false accusations against me, and they told me I could leave if I want since there is nothing wrong here with me. When I went to the back door of my car to close it, Karen came to me again and tried to reach into my pockets and shouted, "Where are the keys? You don't deserve this car. I will take it from you now, you foreign jerk. Just go and steal another car and fool the police again." I really couldn't believe that someone would be that stupid to do something like that. The police quickly handcuffed her and put her into their car. I was asked if everything was fine and if I am sure that I don't want to press charges against her. This time, I said I do want to press charges because I considered this last action as a personal attack. Afterwards, I drove home and hoped that she would get what she deserves or at least get sent into psychiatry. Backstory. My dad has been a car mechanic for over 30 years now and is self-employed for like 25 years. He has a very good reputation too and is one of those people who always tries to not get in any argument at all costs, just like myself. This whole situation happened like 2.5 years ago, and over the course of several months, I can clearly remember that day, and it shakes me every time I think about it. It was the end of the first week of summer break here in Germany, and I had an eerie feeling and got up from our couch to walk towards the front door. I then saw smoke coming out of the open door of our garage and asked my mom what my dad was doing today. She answered that he was welding and asked why I asked. I then got in action and told her that there was smoke coming out of the open garage door. She came down out of our office where she wrote bills for my father's clients. We then went out there and found out that the car was on fire because the main wires of the electrical system were on fire. Thankfully, my dad had already gotten out from under the car. We then rolled the car out of the garage while my mother called the fire department. By the time she was calling them, one of the firefighters, who just so happens to be our next-door neighbor, came rushing over with his fire extinguisher and helped to clear the fire. His wife had seen what was happening and had told him to hurry up. We already had used our fire extinguisher and were just relieved that our neighbor was there with us helping us in a professional manner. By the time the fire department arrived, the fire was already under control and they just had to basically cool the car down so that it wouldn't begin to burn again. The car itself didn't have so much damage, but the whole wires for the basic functions of the car were destroyed, so it was basically totaled even though the body was fully intact. The police were also called and asked us what had happened. They said that there weren't going to be any consequences out of this for my father because the fire was already under control when the firefighters came. They all went and said that we should all go inside and calm down a bit after what had happened. By the way, it wasn't a full-blown fire, thankfully, but there was a lot of smoke and heat. I think everybody can understand that I was still in shock and that I was just glad that my father was unharmed and that I had this bad feeling that made me check at the right time. So, after we all had calmed down a little bit, my dad went to the woman who owned the car and told her what happened. He even wanted to pay her 2,000 to 3,000 euros so that she could buy a new car. Her now destroyed car wouldn't have brought her more than 500 euro if she had sold it before it caught fire, and also wanted to help her find a good one. Through internet, he knows what to look for. So this lady would have basically nothing to do. But she declined everything. except that we wanted to cancel her insurance for the car, so my mother went to the registration office and signed out the car. So we thought this was the happy ending, but no, unfortunately not. Now comes the Karen of the story into play. I think it was 3 weeks later when my father got a letter from the police stating that someone had filed charges against him for intentionally setting the car on fire. He was supposed to come to an audience the next week or so that the process could begin. At this point, I was baffled that this entitled woman thought that she could get even more money from my father than he was offering her by pressing charges against him. She always seemed like a nice lady. My mom was instantly furious and said to my father that we now needed a lawyer, so that's what my dad did. The next day, he had his first meeting with his lawyer, who then spoke to the police that my dad didn't set the car on fire, which also could be read in the official report of the police officers, which were called the day of the fire. So we thought that was it. But the lady also had a lawyer and wanted all the money she needed to buy a brand new car and the money she had spent to get to doctor's appointments. She's like 70 or something, so she has a lot of doctor's appointments. This went back and forth until she altogether stopped to pay her lawyer and also stopped to answer his calls and emails. She seemed to be impatient and thought she didn't have to wait for such a long time for the money she had wanted. A few months went on, and we hadn't heard from her or her lawyer when suddenly 3 police officers, 2 women and 1 man, showed up at our home. We had just got rid of the car, which stood all the time on our courtyard. We had given that lady a lot of time to get it off of our property, and when she didn't meet the deadline or heard anything from her lawyer to get more time, our lawyer allowed us to get it towed from our courtyard. They had been eyeing my car, which is from the same brand, and thought that this was the car they were looking for. My mom was alone at home when they came and told me this when I came back from school later that day. At that point, I hadn't had my driver's license yet. The man was like, "We want to inspect that car over there." Mom asked, "Why would you want to do that?" One of the policewomen said, "Because of the charges against your husband." Then you are too late. That's my daughter's car. The car you are searching for was just removed yesterday. Also, please speak to our lawyer and give them the phone number and address. Then they just went their way. My mother immediately informed our lawyer about what had happened. A few days later, our lawyer found out why the police officers were here. The lawyer of the old lady somehow tried to get the money for the work he had done. So he got the highest rank of judge he knew in private to somehow get him his money. In the end, my father had to pay €300 to the estate so that the process would be brought to a close. And that was thankfully the end of it. Still, to this day, we haven't heard or seen the old lady. The entitled mother is my mom. So it was my birthday a couple weeks ago, and a few days ago, my mom came back from visiting my aunt and gave me a nice bag that my aunt had bought for me and told me to call her to say thanks, and so I did, and this is what happened. Me. "Hey, Aunt, thank you so much for the bag. It's really nice. I love it." Aunt. "Thank you, honey, but what about the backpack? I bought it for you because it's really nice and you can take it to university." "What backpack?" "Oh, I gave your mom a backpack to give to you. She didn't give it?" "Nope, she only gave me the bag. So I go talk to my mother and this is how it goes." Me. "Mom, Aunt said she sent a backpack, but you only gave me the bag." Entitled Mother. "Oh, sorry, but she told me only the bag was for you." "That's weird. I just talked to her and she told me she sent it to me to use for university." No, she must be confused, but hey, here, I have an old backpack. You can take it. That is also my backpack that you took because you liked it so much and I was doing online school. A few days go by and I go and say to her, "So I'm finally going back to in-person classes tomorrow, and I would really love to use my new backpack. Can you give it to me?" "No, I talked to your aunt, and she said I could keep it." I knew that was a lie, so I just took my backpack and left while she kept screaming. Not my problem that she's so entitled. It is my bag, though.